You're now listening to episode 105 from the Shed End. I hope you're all doing well this Friday afternoon. Theo, how you doing?
Not bad, not bad. And like I always say, I'm during an international break period, missing the Premier League footy. Managed to stay busy watching the internationals or some of the internationals. The Chelsea women as well have been really successful in the last few weeks, and also a bit of the ATP finals tennis. But other than that, really missing Chelsea. So looking forward to tomorrow's game. How are you doing?
I'm good. I think I needed a break, to be honest, from just watching a lot of football. I didn't really catch many of the international games, and like I said before we started recording, I didn't watch any of the women's football. So it's been sort of a nice break, to be fair. Like you, other sports, I was watching the darts last week. That was really good, the Grand Slam PDC darts. So yeah, man, it was good. It's good just to get a break. But obviously we're back into it now. We're back into the full swing of things. I don't think there's any international football, if I read correctly, till March. The back end of March now. So this is the most crucial period in terms of our season anyway. But before we get into the episode, please go and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you go to the social accounts as well. There's a Linktree link in the description, so make sure you hit that before you leave this video, and also leave your comments below. Let us know your thoughts about the episode. But let's start with, as you said, some of the women's football, some of the results recently. I think it was a 5-1 victory against Liverpool most recently in the league for the women's team, and also a good European victory against Paris FC. I think that was 4-1 midweek. Two similar hat tricks, I think. Obviously Sam Kerr midweek in the European competition, and obviously Lauren James at the last weekend against Liverpool. Looking like hopefully this could be Emma Hayes, obviously her last season as a Chelsea manager, but looking to go out with a big bang.
Yeah, two really fantastic results, both at Stamford Bridge as well. So good to have those games played at our kind of home stadium. Sam Kerr, fantastic last night against Paris FC, scoring a hat-trick in the Champions League, and Lauren James at Stamford Bridge against Liverpool, scoring a hat-trick as well, and some really good goals that she scored. And I think it's good to see that those two results came at the end of a bit of a controversial result against Real Madrid the week before in the Champions League, because I think I didn't get to watch that game, but I saw some images on Twitter and a couple of tweets, or X, whatever you want to call it now, of, I believe, one of our Chelsea goals, which was wrongfully disallowed for offside, and a Real Madrid penalty where the foul was actually committed outside the penalty box. I'm guessing those decisions were given that way because there's no VAR in the competition. So that game finished 2-2, so dropping points against Real Madrid, but getting 3 points against Paris FC, who I believe were semi-finalists of the competition in 2013. So they're quite an experienced and good team. And big result for Emma Hayes' Chelsea women's team against Liverpool the weekend before. So yeah, some really good results, and I'm really hoping Emma Hayes can lift some more silverware at the end of this season before she heads off to the United States.
Yeah, still unbeaten in the league as well. 7 played, 6 wins, 1 draw, 23 goals scored, 5 conceded, 19 points. So it's looking very good. Yeah, I mean, look, this would be the icing on the cake, I think, for Emma Hayes, wouldn't it? If she could go away with, a couple of trophies under her belt, a final farewell as Chelsea manager. So I think, we know we're in the women's team. There's a lot of quality. International coming up soon as well. The tournament's coming up in the next couple of months. So I think there's a lot of places, or a lot of first team places up for grabs, especially for England and some of the other nations in that tournament. So we know it's difficult to assess the women's game at times, but I thought, from what I have seen of it, it's a league that's obviously growing. We've spoke about it on here as well, so I think only positives to take from it, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And 2 big games coming up, I think, this weekend against Leicester City, and then Arsenal away from home on the 10th of December, early kickoff 12:30. So hopefully if we can kind of stay top of the table and unbeaten before Christmas, I think things will look quite nice for Emma Hayes and Chelsea women's team.
Yeah. Let's hope that the winning streak continues for Emma Hayes and Chelsea women's team as well. Now, I did want to try and gauge from Maurizio Pochettino how the team might set up against Newcastle tomorrow when we do our predicted lineups later in the episode. But true Chelsea fashion, the press conference has been delayed by 30 minutes. So it was due, as we're recording now, it was due to take place at 1 p.m. It's now been moved to 1:30. So there isn't anything we can really discuss on what Maurizio Pochettino might be wanting to do in tomorrow's game against Newcastle. But just in terms of some of the players that we know have returned from injury, obviously we know I think when we last recorded, Mudryk was on that list of injured players. He's now obviously not on that list. So currently we've got Trevor Chalobah, who I think, if I read correctly in the week, was expected to come back in the team, or was, ready to go back to full team training, but has had some sort of flare up of an injury that seems to be ongoing. Let's talk about Trevor actually first, because I think we spoke about him. I think when we ended the last episode, we sort of carried on talking offline, and it's a bit of an odd one because obviously Trevor Chalobah hasn't featured, I don't think, this season, has he? I don't think he has. No. So
No.
So it seems he's on the way out. I think we call it an injury. Is it an injury, or is it just a way of keeping Trevor Chalobah out of the limelight, out of the team until the winter window opens? What's your thoughts?
I don't think he's injured. I think he's just kind of frozen out the team. And I've got the injury list open here. The kind of status for his injury is continuing to undergo his rehabilitation program. I'm not buying that at all. He looked absolutely fine in preseason. He looked fit, and then miraculously, by some weird reason, before the Liverpool game back in August, he was not in the team. And if you look at his Instagram activities, he's out in LA at the moment. So if you're continuing a rehabilitation program, you don't go to the US, California. You'd be at Cobham. You'd be on the recovery bikes. You'd be in the pool. You'd be doing some light running on the grass, but you wouldn't be out in LA. So I think he's clearly been told by Pochettino that he's not in his plans, and that his agent and himself can try to find another club in January. So I think he'll be the first player transfer listed come January. And unfortunately, his time at Chelsea is up by the looks of it.
Yeah, it's I think, well, like I said, we were talking post-recording last week, but it's a shame because he's obviously a really good defender. I think he's one of those defenders that we'll probably talk about in the same breath as Mark Guehi or Fikayo Tomori, in terms of the quality and the level that they can possibly reach. And he has to go into that, for me anyway, he has to go into that category, that bracket of players, because I think he has got the quality to, we're looking at Ruben Loftus-Cheek at the moment at, AC Milan, who has started the season well for them. And I think sometimes with Chelsea, what we do is we're one or the other. We're either lacking central defenders or we've got too many, so we have to let some go. And I feel now we're at that point where we've brought too many in. Someone has to go, and I think it's unfortunate for him because he's for me personally, very consistent in a back three or a back two. I think it is a shame for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, very consistent, also very versatile. He can play in a back three in a kind of pairing of two centre backs. He's played at right back at times. When he went out on loan at Lorient in Ligue 1, he played as a central defensive midfielder.
Yeah,
and like you said, there's been links to him moving to Bayern Munich, to Inter Milan, or one of the two Milan clubs. So I think wherever he goes next, he'll kind of grow in his footballing career. And I'm just remembering him kind of making his Chelsea debut in the Super Cup against Villarreal back, I think, summer 2021. And he put in almost a flawless performance, and he looked absolutely great in that position as the centre back. And I always bring up this statistic, but we were unbeaten with Chalobah when Chalobah would start up until October 2022, when we played Brighton away from home and we lost, I think, 4-1. So that was almost a season and a couple months of playing Trevor Chalobah, or having Trevor Chalobah around the first team squad. And we didn't lose a single one of those games up until that one. So like you said, very consistent, and we can only wish him the best, because I feel we will kind of put him in that Tomori, Guehi, possibly Loftus-Cheek bracket, of maybe regressing the move. But yeah, I think definitely a player to keep an eye out on for as kind of a football fan.
Yeah, definitely 100%. A couple of other names on the injury list at the moment. It does seem to be dwindling down eventually. I think at one point we had 9 or 10 players on this list, so we've currently got 6 at the moment. So Ben Chilwell, who we know is currently, as you said, the blanket statement that seems to come out every Friday, continue to undergo his rehabilitation program. The same for Carney Chukwuemeka and Wesley Fofana. And it does seem that Romeo Lavia and Christopher Nkunku are slightly a bit further behind those in those names I've just mentioned. But just in terms of Wesley Fofana, Christopher Nkunku, 2 players that I think we're hoping to see back into the fold, into the starting lineup very soon. Before the international break, there was sort of signs that maybe Nkunku would be potentially fit to even be on the bench for that game, but it doesn't look like either Romeo Lavia or Nkunku will be on there. But let's start with Nkunku first, because I think he's a player that Mauricio Pochettino has given a lot of credit to already without even kicking a ball in the Premier League for us. How and where will he fit into this team, when he is fully fit to come back in?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. He looked absolutely fantastic in pre-season, playing just behind Nicholas Jackson, and he scored a couple goals. I remember he scored against Fulham. Pretty sure he scored one against Brighton or Newcastle. And some really promising images of him training on the grass or running on the grass alongside Lavia this week that came out. And I think he took part in his first training session with the first team yesterday or the day before. So there's rumours that he may be fit enough to make the bench at St James's Park tomorrow, but I wouldn't risk him. I'd maybe let him train for another week and maybe consider him for the Brighton game at home the following weekend. Where he fits in, it's very tricky because I feel like a lot of our offensive players are playing really well at the moment, particularly Sterling, Palmer, Mudryk has shown glimmers of his potential, which is the reason why we would have signed him for so much money back in January. So yeah, I would potentially play him alongside behind Jackson and maybe switch Palmer to more of a wing role. Maybe even drop Jackson and play Nkuku as a number 9. That's an option. He scored a lot of goals for RB Leipzig last season, a joint top goal scorer alongside Nico Fulkberg. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a bit of a dilemma for Pochettino as well. He's going to need a couple Mate Argentinian teas, which is probably the reason why he's late for his press conference now. He's probably still brewing his tea. But yeah, it's going to be a bit of a headache for him. A good headache though.
I think what you just said at the end of that is crucial, and I think I would personally would drop him for Jackson. I think he has to. I get the idea of playing him behind Jackson and how it works in the preseason, but I think we're at that very crucial, as I said at this, the crucial part of the season now where we need to pick up points, we need to get goals, and one of those things that we've both said before, if he's fit enough to be on the bench, he should be fit enough to at least start, 60 minutes of the game, maybe bring him off, maybe you bring on Jackson for the last 20 minutes of a game, 30 minutes of a game. So I would like to see him play as a the number 9. I want to see him in that position. I agree with you about moving maybe Cole Palmer to a wing as well. But I think we've got other players that can also fit in and play that 10 role as well. Conor Gallagher, like you said, has been doing that really well this season at times. So I think, for me, when he is fully fit, I think Fabrizio Romano said that they're both, him and Lavia, definitely out for tomorrow's game. So I don't think we'll even see either of them on the bench. I think they're a bit further away from coming back into the team. But I do think when he is fit enough to at least be on the bench, I'd start him. And I'd give him 60 minutes, and I'd phase him back into the team. We have to remember he's not played a competitive game for us, so I think a lot of expectation is based on that summer series where he did play really well before picking up the injury. But I think we have to be patient with Nkuku now this season. It's a long injury that's kept him out for nearly 50% of the season. So I think we have to be patient, and we can't really. I'm not expecting him to hit numbers, I suppose is what I'm saying, in front of goal this season. But I want to see more from him than we've seen from Jackson, if that makes sense as well.
Yeah, there's high expectations. So like I said, joint top goal scorer in the Bundesliga last year, and he missed, I think, a good 3 or 4 months with injury, which is the period of time he's missed now. He's missed almost the whole of August, September, October, and he will probably miss the whole of November if he doesn't feature tomorrow. So I don't expect him either to come in and hit the ground running straight away, but I've got higher expectations for Nkuku. He's got a better track record than Nicholas Jackson has, and he'll probably have in the back of his mind the France Euro squad coming up. I think the draw takes place next weekend. Like you said, next round of internationals, March. And if he's kind of involved in that March team under Didier Deschamps, then that's probably the team that Didier Deschamps will want to take to the Euros in the summer in Germany. So he'll definitely have one eye on making an impact to be able to make that squad. And he was definitely a player that would often feature in Didier Deschamps' squad prior to joining Chelsea. So I think he'll want to kind of make an impact, but I think Chelsea fans need to give him a bit of time. And we have so many fixtures in December as well. I said this in the last recording. He's going to get game time in December. We can't rush him. Like you said, 60 minutes his first game, maybe even an introduction off the bench, give him maybe half an hour. But I don't expect him to kind of work miracles from the off.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. Let's talk about Wesley Fofana, another player who's back in training by the sounds of it as well. And could potentially make a return to the game against Newcastle at St James's Park tomorrow. I've still got question marks about Wesley Fofana. I'm going to be honest. I like him as a central defender. I like him as a defender as a whole. I just question his ability to stay fit now. I think he's in that Reece James category for me. Can he stay fit? Can we get a season or even 60% of a season out of him to assess him properly? There's central defenders in front of him. Ben Badiashile for me would be someone to play ahead of him. Even Desazi as well, who I've criticised at times, but I think both of those easily could slot in and play the position that we want Fofana to do as well. So is this now a case of Fofana trying to stay fit, force his way back into the team? As you mentioned, the Euros is coming up, so there's contention for him to be in that squad as well. So is this a case now for him to just try and stay fit and get himself back into the lineup?
Yeah, I think the first picture was released of him running again on the grass yesterday. I don't think he'll feature up at least until March, April, if I'm realistic. That was a really nasty injury he had. I don't think he'll be anywhere near the first team up until maybe those months I said. But like you said, he might want to break into the French national team again. He's a player that has shown really good potential, but like you flagged, his injury record really isn't promising at all. We saw at Leicester, he missed, I think, a full season of football with injury. Last season, he picked up that injury after scoring against AC Milan. And then I think only made his return again in March time, if I'm not mistaken. So missed a good 5 months of football almost. I think what's good, like you said, it's probably the first season of a long time where we're almost spoiled for choices in centre-backs. And now that Badiashile is back fit, I don't think he's going to be missed too much in that time, but definitely a player that we signed, given his age, his potential. We signed him for a lot of money as well, so we're going to have to hope that he can eventually stay fit, especially when the likes of Thiago Silva retire or move on from Chelsea Football Club.
Yeah, agreed. I mentioned Reece James for a reason, because I was on a podcast earlier on this week and we were picking our England squad who we think should go into next year's Euros 2024, and I said Reece James wouldn't make my plane. He wouldn't get a seat on the plane. I want to get your views on that, and would you take Reece James based on current form? Obviously, reassess it in the summer, but currently as it stands at the moment, would Reece James get on the plane for Gareth Southgate?
It's a tough one. I've listened to a lot of YouTubers or YouTube channels and podcasts also pick their England squads for next summer. And it depends on the criteria, whether you're basing it on the team, the players that are fit now, the players that are fit regardless of the situation right now. I think on the back end of that performance against City, where he really kept Jeremy Doku quiet, I would pick him. And especially if Trent is moved more to a midfield role, I think Southgate might want to consider Reece James, but it completely depends on his injury status come the summer. And I think if he's not involved in that March England squad that I think plays friendlies against, I think it might be Germany and Brazil. Brazil's one of them. I'm not sure about the other team. I think it's Germany. If he's not in that team, then I don't think he'll be selected for the Euros. I think Trippier is maybe slightly ahead of him now in the pecking order. As a Chelsea fan, it would be great to see him take part, especially after he missed the World Cup in Qatar last season. And if I'm completely honest, he's excelled when he's played for Chelsea, but I don't think he's been that good when he's played for England at times. I'm remembering one performance where he got sent off, I believe. It's maybe Southgate, like we know, he tends to have his favourites, the likes of Maguire, Henderson, those type of players. So maybe if Reece James isn't considered as one of those untouchables, then he might not be on the plane to Germany in the summer.
The reason I said I wouldn't put him on the plane, I look at Carl Walker, I look at Kieran Trippier, Trent as well, Alexander-Arnold, who I think all three of them will go. Trent could easily slot into the midfield, which I think he did midweek against North Macedonia. I think it was he slotted into that midfield role as well. I look at the left side, Ben Chilwell might not be fit, so you look at maybe Luke Shaw being another left-sided player that will go. Maybe Levi Colwill plays a left-sided player as well. But I think ultimately, Gareth Southgate would take Trent, Kieran Trippier, who can play the left side as well. He can play, the left side of the defence. and Carl Walker. Maybe Rico Lewis would maybe get into that squad ahead of, again, can play midfield, but can also play left side, the left back's role as well. So I look at maybe those options, and I just think with Reece James, he hasn't played enough. It ultimately comes down to he hasn't played enough football. Even if I think he was to put in a few more good performances over the next couple of months or so, I still think, like you said, Kieran Trippier, in terms of what Southgate thinks, is ahead of him in terms of the pecking order. So yeah, I think I don't think he'll get in personally. I'm not sure. I don't think he does it.
And all those names you listed, fullbacks and centre backs, that's at least a good 8 or 9 players.
Yeah.
And you don't want to compromise on your midfield and strikers by picking so many defenders. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the selection that Southgate makes. But there's a lot of football still to play between now and the summer.
Yep, definitely, 100%. Let's move on to a conversation that came up last Friday around Everton, who were docked 10 points. I think it was the first time in Premier League history, if I'm correct, that such sanctions have been, or such punishments have been handed out in terms of points deduction. Now, obviously, that got everyone's ears pringed up thinking about Manchester City, who have got 115 breaches, and Chelsea, who are potentially looking at getting a sanction or some sort of fine, or people are talking about relegation and all the rest of it. But what's your thoughts on Chelsea, first of all? Obviously, there's going to be some sort of sanction. I think that's just the obvious. When you spend so much, and the way that we've done our transfer dealings over the last 2 or 3 seasons, you'd expect some form of punishment to come. And obviously, getting into Europe this season is key to allow for some of those restrictions of financial fair play. But do you see us being in a position where we might be given a sanction of some sort?
Yeah, I was trying to understand all this because I was listening to a podcast with Lineker and Alan Shearer, who had an expert come on and discuss it. And what's quite interesting to know is that Chelsea haven't been charged yet. They're being investigated, which is the big difference at the moment. And City have been charged, but because there's 115 breaches of it, I think it's going to take another couple of years until maybe we see some repercussions.
Of course it is.
Of that. Of course it is, exactly. And I think we're being investigated for some deals that took place under the Abramovich era.
Yeah.
That breached FFP rules back in, I think, 2013. It might have been the Eto'o and the Willian deals from Anzi Mashakalala.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I do also think that these are done independently from the Premier League. So whether the Premier League intervenes and has a say, because big teams like City and Chelsea are so crucial, I feel, to how the Premier League operates from a television perspective, from the kind of the image that those clubs provide, and the money that they bring into the league as well. So I do think there's more that's going to kind of come out of this and more that's going to happen. But at the moment, I'm just trying to brush it under the carpet and not focus on it too much, because it's quite scary when you think that if Everton are deducted 10 points for one breach, what Chelsea could be facing could be a lot worse, potentially. And and we have seen it happen before with some transfer bans. But what Man City could be facing for 115 breaches, we're talking relegation there. We're talking minus 50 points. But whether that actually happens or comes to fruition, I don't think it will happen this season. But yeah, I'm not really an expert to talk about it, but I just find it a bit scary, but also very interesting.
I mean, from what I know, and there was a good, and I don't normally watch this podcast, but it was the Gary Neville overlap one, and they had David Ornstein on this week talking about Everton sanctions, but obviously trying to understand the difference between the charges that have been brought against Everton and the investigation that's going on with Chelsea. They're very different. So, I mean, look, Everton's been run in a very, very bad way in terms of the amount that they've spent and how they've overspent. And I think they were like nearly 300 million over.
New stadium as well.
New stadium. So, I mean, they've been ran really badly for years and years. This is going back nearly 10, 12 years. Whereas I think Chelsea's in a different position, whereas we've been actually ran really well. We just haven't complied with what we should have done. So there's a slight difference there from what David Ornstein was trying to say on the overlap. But I think, look, if someone buys a club, they're not buying it without the knowledge or the experts behind them And I think there'll be a punishment. I don't think it'd be points deduction. I don't think City will get points deductions. I'll be honest. I think they'll probably get a transfer embargo. We've been there before. If you think about Gal Kakuta a couple of years ago as well, when we ended up with a transfer ban because of that. So I don't think we'll get points deductions. I think it'd be a massive fine. I think the Premier League needs clubs like Chelsea. It needs a Man City in the league. They wouldn't. I mean, could you imagine a league without Man City? It just wouldn't happen. And to be honest, there's too much money that gets passed around at the very top that the FA, the Premier League, skim the top off as well. So I just can't. I can't see it happening. I think it'd be a massive fine for both clubs. But like you, I'm not very clued up on it. I need to read up on it a bit more. But from what I know, it's completely different to how Everton's investigation and the breach, how that was all dealt with, will be totally different because of the type of investigation, the type of breaches and things like that. So there's a lot to deal. It's not a black and white case of, well, Everton's been deducted 10 points, Chelsea should get a 50-point deduction or something. I don't think it's that easy to do that. So we'll see. But like I say, I'm pretty sure there's experts looking at that, and Chelsea will have lawyers and legal teams before they make a purchase. I'm sure they'll be advising them. They'll be working with the FA as well, with the Premier League, to try and comply with whatever the FFP ruling is. So I'm not that stressed about it than I think some Chelsea fans are, which what will be, won't it? I don't think we can change that.
We're a very reactionary fan base after all, so it's expected. But like you said, realistically, I think the most will happen will be a big fine or potentially a transfer embargo, but points deductions or even relegation is very unrealistic at this stage due to the kind of stature of those two clubs, City and Chelsea, and the importance of them to the Premier League.
Agreed. Let's turn our attention to tomorrow's game at St James's Park. I'm just looking now. I'm just trying to see if you can remember our last win at St James's and who was the scorers. You're normally quite good at these, so not to put you on the spot. But
I put a tweet up with our last 10 results at St James's Park before this podcast. But yeah, 3-0. I think it's 3-0. Was it in November 2021? Reece James bag 2, and was it Jorginho penalty? I think
it was. Yep.
And there was those famous memes, St. Reece James's Park, that followed up on it after the game.
I think that was a podcast title as well for that week.
It was, it must have been. But not the best of records there. I think only two other wins, which included a win, I think, where Tammy Abraham and Shah scored an own goal. And then we have to go back to August 2018, where I think it was a Hazard penalty and a deflected Alonso goal, something like that. So not the best of records, and some embarrassing performance in that mix. So last season's 1-0 defeat on the Graham Potter. There was that, I think, Jose Perez and Dwight Gale scored in a 3-0 win on the last day of the season in 2018. So it's not the best of records. And I was seeing Gary Neville made a prediction that Chelsea are going to lose 2-0 purely based on how long the distance is between London and Newcastle and how cold it's going to be up there, which I think is a stupid reasoning. But I do get his point. It's a tough place to go.
It is, but not for the weather conditions. I mean,
not for the weather. You're a professional footballer. You should be able to play regardless of the conditions. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. Really interesting. I think annoying that international break came when it did, because we looked really sharp against, I want to say, against Tottenham, and spells against Tottenham. And especially against Man City, scoring 4 against the champions Man City was really impressive. And it's also the amount of opportunities that we created in that game and the football that we played.
Yeah.
Cole Palmer, man of the match once again, and Sterling playing some really good football. But Newcastle have a lot of injuries. I think I mentioned this before, but the company I currently work for is based up in Newcastle, so all my colleagues are Geordies. And they actually added me to a football chat on Slack. Yeah, I'm the only Chelsea fan in that chat, and it came out a good timing because they've all bombarding you with Papi Cisse throwback goals and all this. I mean,
it was a good goal. I did watch that the other day.
It was a good goal. I did give them kind of credit for it. I said it's probably one of the best goals I saw live at Stamford Bridge. But a lot of injuries they've got. I think one of them told me that their whole attacking players are injured, being Almiron, Isak, Callum Wilson. So they've got a lot of injuries. I think Sean Longstaff's recently picked up an injury. They've had to bring kind of players out of that were kind of initially frozen out, like Emil Kraft, I think Swedish centre back that usually hasn't really played much football recently.
Yeah.
So maybe it is a good time to play them, potentially. But like I said at the start, St James's Park's always a tough ground to go to.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I think this is, as you said, probably the best time to play them, just looking at the injuries that they've got now. Obviously, Tonali's suspended, Dan Burn, Sven Botman, Harvey Barnes, Lewis Hall, Matt Targett, Jacob Murphy, as you mentioned, Almiron, Isak, Longstaff, Wilson, all out. As far as we know for tomorrow. So it does give us probably the upper hand, albeit, we should technically already have the upper hand, being on paper the better team. I mean, this for me is the game where we need to continue that form. As you said, against Tottenham, we played really well, albeit against 9 men. But I was really impressed with the Man City game. And I thought when you come up against the champions, it was almost like watching a boxing match, where you see someone going toe to toe with the best fighter in the world. We didn't back down. We carried on fighting to the very end. So I was impressed with that. And I do agree with you that international break will either go one or two ways now. It will either push the players on to continue to play in that vein and that progress even further than the City game, or we'll do what we usually do after an international break and we'll collapse and look like we're half-assed about the game. So I think this is the perfect time to play them. I really do. I'm just looking at Newcastle's potential predicted lineup, and it has Anthony Gordon, who has played there a couple of times, but play him as the false 9. Obviously Bruno Guimaraes is still a very difficult player to come up against, but you look at some of the other players, Joel Linton. I think Tino Livramento might have to switch to that left back role as well. Jamal Lascelles, and as you mentioned as well, Fabian Schär might have to go into that centre back partnership with Lascelles. So I think this is the perfect time for us to be playing Newcastle, and I am confident that we can get a win. I am confident. It all depends on the lineup as always. But one thing I wanted to ask you as well, because I did read this on the internet last week, was that we haven't seen the away kit this season. I don't think, have we? I think the women's team have used it once, but I don't think we've used it. I don't think we've used our the navy kit.
We haven't. No, it's funny you mentioned that because my brother literally just got it today in the Black Friday sales.
Yeah, yep.
So yeah, he got it, and I saw it, and I said, I haven't seen this yet. And I was looking at our upcoming games, thinking, when is the next time we could potentially wear this? I think it would clash with Newcastle's black and white.
Yeah, it will.
But I think the next time we could realistically wear it might be away to Everton, I believe.
Yes.
I think in the build up to Christmas, I think that will be the next time we probably see it live on TV with the men's senior team. But I think tomorrow we'll just stick to our home kit. Most likely.
Yeah, more than likely, won't we? But let's go into our predicted lineups, because again, it's always difficult to try and pick out a Maurizio Pochettino team at the moment. But there are some bankers, obviously Robert Sanchez. But what would your back line be? Would it be a back four? Who would you go with?
I think, given how well we played against City, I think he'll replicate that same 11. So I think it'll be Sanchez, Reece James right back as the captain, Silva, who didn't go out with the internationals with Brazil, so he stayed at Cobham, trained alongside Cescy, who I thought played quite well against City, despite maybe being able to prevent the Haaland goal right after half time. And then Cucurella at left back, Gallagher, Enzo and Caicedo, and then Jackson, Palmer and Sterling. I think it's that would be my starting 11.
I'm on the fence a little bit. No, I am, just because of Nicholas Jackson, and I think he did play really well against Man City, and obviously got his hat trick against. Shamelessly got his hat trick against Spurs, but I look at the team and I think, I keep saying this, and this was the period where we said a couple of weeks ago that was so crucial. Where do we pick up the points? We looked at our December and we thought, well, this is where we're going to drop points. So I think that still remains the case. Albeit we beat Spurs and City, or we drew against City, but I think this is a massive game for us, and I'd like to think that Nicholas Jackson will perform well, but I don't want to take the risk either. The other option would be to play Sterling in that role. Maybe bring Mudryk in as the left-sided winger. maybe, but I do 80%, 85% agree with you that part of me wants to give Jackson that chance to just maybe go and score a really good goal, put in
a good goal or a tap in. A lot of his goals have been tap ins.
We'll take the
but
tap in.
I think you mentioned a lot of those injuries. Newcastle won't have their main centre backs on the pitch, so it could be a chance for Jackson to maybe make one of those runs, get behind them, have the ball square to him on a plate and slot it in. The other option is the man who won us a penalty against City in the last minute of the game, Amanda Broja, who's not on that injury list anymore.
Yeah.
Potentially. So I think it makes sense to start with number 9 for this game and not play Sterling or Palmer as the false 9. But whether it's Jackson, Broja, I'm not sure, and how much minutes they get, I don't know either. But I think it would make sense to start with number 9 for this game. And both Jackson and Broja are quite tall as well.
Yeah,
Lascelles is a tall guy. Set pieces. I think we'll need kind of a bit of height in this game as well.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. I'm gonna stick with your lineup. I am going to stick with your lineup. I agree. Why change what worked so well against Man City? If it's not broke, don't fix it. That's the mentality I suppose people have. So I'm going to go with your lineup as well. Start with Jackson, reluctantly start with Nicholas Jackson up front. But I do agree with you, good option to have off the bench. I was really, we didn't speak about it, but I was really impressed with Amanda Broja when he came on against City. And like you said, won us that league. It was a really good penalty as well in terms of
really
winning the penalty. That sort of dummy, I think it was Ruben Diaz who slid in. But it's a really good sort of half dummy just to by the foul, by the penalty. So I think there's signs that he's getting back to the form or showing signs of the potential form that we thought he might have as well. So really impressive, bro. A good option to have off the bench. And obviously, if Mudryk doesn't start, another player that clearly isn't on that injury list as well. So you would hope that he's back in on the bench, and he can play some form of that game tomorrow. So let's go with our lineups, our predicted score. Sorry, we've done the lineups. Our predicted score for tomorrow. Surely you can't stick with the Gary Neville because of the weather. It's going to be 2-0, but that's such a ridiculous thing to say. But
yeah, if you looked at our Twitter, there's only been one draw in the last 10 Newcastle-Chelsea fixtures at St James's Park. So it's either going to be a Chelsea win or a Newcastle win. It's so hard to say. I think it depends on how Chelsea play on the day, whether we play like we did against Tottenham and City, or whether we just go back to those performances against Forest, Sevilla, and so on. I want to be confident. I'm going to say 2-1 Chelsea. Yeah. I'm going to be confident.
We're actually agreeing on everything today because I'm going to go 2-1 as well. I think we'll win. I do think we'll win. Yeah, I think we've got as I said, this is the perfect time to play Newcastle. All those injuries, we haven't really got an excuse. We do have the better team. It is difficult to go to St James's Park, but I do think from what I've seen from the Tottenham game, especially that City game, having that team back after the international break, I'm hoping Pochettino's had a good training session with them. I'd assume they'll be travelling up today for the game for tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to a really good performance from the players tomorrow.
Yeah, and the last two results for Newcastle, they lost 2-0 away to Dortmund, 2-0 away to Bournemouth.
Yep.
And they've got PSG on Tuesday midweek, away from home.
Yeah.
So they're going to have one eye on that game too. I don't know if they can afford to rotate their team given the injuries.
Yeah.
But I think they might want to focus on that big European fixture on Tuesday night. So yeah, I think things are favourably pointing towards Chelsea.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, as you say, I think that game on Tuesday is massive for Newcastle. They're bottom of their group in Group F in the Champions League. So a win against PSG is potentially more vital for them than it is in this league. And as you say, they'll probably have one eye on that game tomorrow. So 2-1 is the prediction. We've agreed on our predicted lineup, which is not that uncommon, actually. I think we've done that quite often this season. So, yeah, let us know your thoughts. Let us know what your predictions will be for tomorrow's game. Let us know what your predicted lineup is as well. As I said at the start of this, make sure you hit the Linktree link in the description. Subscribe to the channel as well. And yeah, make sure you hit the audio version on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts as well. So Theo, as always, thank you. It's been a pleasure. We'll be back next week, hopefully with another 3 points in the bag and another good performance. And yeah, keep checking out the YouTube video for the next one.